Everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you today with an article from Red State. This is dated October 8th, and sit down, it's kind of a long one, and it's gonna piss you off. This is exclusive. U.S. soldiers trapped in Israel on October 7th narrowly escaped being taken captive by Hamas. And that's not the part that's going to piss you off, though that probably is. As I say that, it's going to be, as we go on here, you'll know what it is. So, getting into it. It says 40 U.S. Army soldiers who were in Israel as the advance team for what they thought was a routine training exercise last October 7th suddenly found themselves in the middle of a war, unarmed, and being forced to beg reluctant Pentagon officials to send an Air Force plane to extract them. So, understand that our Pentagon just went like, basically, oh, too bad. So, there's approximately a quarter of the soldiers were just miles from Gaza in off-base housing near the IDF's, it's going to be Tselim base when the attack began. So I'm probably going to butcher that as I go through here if they keep repeating that. But a group of local Israelis, IDF reservists, police officers, and ordinary citizens got them to the base, which Hamas terrorists were quickly heading toward. With his men in mortal danger, the U.S. team leader requested permission to open the arms locker so they could retrieve their firearms, but was denied at the U.S. Central Command level and denied and or ignored at a level above that, according to a military intelligence analyst with knowledge of the mission and exfiltration. So stopping there, when I first read this, because I have read the article, read it like the day it came out, and then just put it on the list of videos to review, because I am recording this a few days after it came out, I'm already pissed off because of seeing this being forced to beg reluctant Pentagon officials to send an Air Force plane to extract them, and then basically that these two parts here where they were denied or ignored at people above them. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, how? I don't get it. It says the rest of the soldiers had just arrived in Tel Aviv, where Hamas rockets were hitting near their hotels. The military intelligence analyst told Red State, with everything going on, with all kinds of indirect fire, with rockets for a good 6-8 hours, those soldiers who were at Elim were in very mortal danger, and the military and civilian leadership at the Pentagon was perfectly willing to not even worry about it. So right there, I'm even more pissed off already. Again, it was approximately 40 hours after the attack started, and only after lengthy conversations at the 3-star HQ level, a U.S. Air Force C-17 briefly touched down in Tel Aviv to exfiltrate the soldiers. Hamas fired a barrage of 150 rockets at the airport shortly after the C-17 took off for Kuwait. So without the quick assistance of Israeli civilians and reservists, the unarmed Americans likely would have been taken hostage by Hamas and perhaps faced the same fate as those in Benghazi, according to the analyst who praised the Israelis' actions. And the analyst said, really, October 7th, more than anything, is a testament to the grit of a lot of the Israeli reserve soldiers who immediately stepped in, or the Israeli security guards around the kibbutzim and places like that who just stepped in and immediately began to act on their training and effectively blunted many of these attacks. Thanks to 3 separate military sources, one of whom was personally involved in the mission, who spoke to Red State exclusively, the harrowing and disturbing story can now be told, and their sources are not named due to fear of retaliation. So, of course, we're getting the story a year later, which stinks because it's like, just again, what is going on in our military besides, like, it just, are they, like, incompetent? I mean, I don't like to think that, but it's like, just seeing the way they fought wars, like Afghanistan and everything in the last 20 years, it's like, can we even like win a war at this point? Like, do we have idiots running the show? That might be a rhetorical question. So this is Operation Iron Bison, but that is a cool name for an operation. It says the U.S. Army Advance Team was in Israel to prepare for the 2-week live-fire joint training exercise named Operation Iron Bison. The exercise was scheduled to kick off during the 3rd week in October at the IDF's Urban Warfare Training Center at Elim in southern Israel, southwest of Be'er Sheva. Probably Shiva, but Sheva is probably more with an Israeli twang to it. So is that it? Okay. All right. So it's about 400 U.S. soldiers, infantry, armor, and aviation units who were deployed to Kuwait in support of Operation Spartan Shield were slated to participate. I'm sorry, I like Iron Bison as a name better than Spartan Shield. But nice throwback to 300 or something. So the advance team. A few weeks before October 7th, a group of about 10 U.S. Army logisticians, is that what they're called? Is that word? Okay. Arrived in Israel to get work at Elim and were staying off base at the Be'er Sheva area. A few days before October 7th, the remainder of the 40-soldier advance team arrived in Tel Aviv and were staying at hotels in central Tel Aviv. When each group arrived in Israel and received a standard country briefing, there was no indication of any potential hostilities from Hamas, the army officer who participated in the event said, adding, there was far more concern about Lebanon and the West Bank than there was Gaza. There was no expectation that they were going to be in any more danger than any other army exercise is. So it says the soldiers at Elim had their service weapons with them in Israel, but they were secured in an arms locker on the base until the time of the exercise. And if there's anyone that's in the armed forces that knows, is that normal? I mean, I have no idea. Never served, so I don't know. Anyway, continuing on, it says, however, the majority of the weapons and ammunition that would be used in the exercise was being sent to Israel with armor from the 155th Armor Brigade from the Mississippi National Guard via ship to the port of Eilat on the Red Sea. On October 7th, that ship was near the entrance to the Red Sea, but turned around and headed to Kuwait after the Hamas attacks began. There's never been an official acknowledgement that there were U.S. troops in Israel on October 7th, but on October 31st, 2023, New York Times story states, but other U.S. officials said the Defense Department has dispatched several dozen commandos in recent days, in addition to a small team that was in Israel on October 7th conducting previously scheduled training. Next section is called October 7th. So on the morning of October 7th, the soldiers in Tel Aviv awoke to sirens and the sound of rockets hitting nearby, and the soldiers near Beersheba woke up to chaos. According to a military intelligence official, those soldiers were at their off-base accommodations, and within minutes, you had Israeli reservists, police officers, and armed civilians helping to get the Americans to the base at Elim. I'm not able to pronounce that word again. So it says, when the attack began, there was a large group of Hamas headed straight for the side of the base the Americans were at. Hamas had very detailed information of people and places. We now know Hamas knew exactly where the American soldiers were staying, and that they had a list of all their names and ranks as well. So how did they get that? Another thing that pisses me off, how did they know this information? And just thinking about what may have happened, it's like, I just could have been awful. Anyway, continuing on once again, so simply getting to the base didn't take them out of harm's way. For a short period of time, they and their Israeli friends were taking hostile fire, according to the military intelligence official. The U.S. team leader sought permission for his team to retrieve their weapons from the locker, but that was denied at the U.S. European command level. He then actioned the request further up, and it was ignored and or denied. According to that source, the Israelis then allowed the Americans to use some of their rifles. Well, thank you very much to the Israelis, who seem to be on the ball, whereas our good old officer class was like, we don't give a shit. So let's keep going here. Now, the soldiers and their Israeli counterparts knew that it wasn't safe for them to remain in the country. Army officers back in Kuwait and the Task Force Spartan headquarters put in a request to CENTCOM for air extraction for both the soldiers at Elim and the soldiers in Tel Aviv. According to the Army officer who spoke to Red State, the Air Force was reluctant to perform any air extraction at all, let alone two. We got to get your soldiers out somehow, dickheads. Finally, after a few conversations took place at the 3-star HQ level, the Air Force agreed to send a C-17 to Tel Aviv. Should be noted, though, that all of the sources who spoke to Red State emphasized that both the Army and Air Force officers below the political rank, or 3-star rank, were determined throughout to get our people back and faced intense opposition from their superiors, but were ultimately successful in getting the flight approved. Okay, so this may answer here my question about like what the hell is going on in the ranks here, because the political rank, I've heard about this before, where it seemed, I thought it was just applied to all the general ranks really, but I guess they're saying 3 or 4 stars, all the political people. So that could explain why like everybody below that was like, we need to get our people back, and these guys were, how is it going to make us look, sort of thing. Which it's like, how would that make you look bad? You want to get your people back. So I'm missing, if there's something that was going to make them look bad, I don't know what that is. So now the soldiers down at Elim had to get from the Beersheba area to Tel Aviv to the military terminal at the airport without their service weapons. There's the map below from October 7th map shows the locations where people were killed, injured, taken hostage on October 7th, and also the locations of Elim and Tel Aviv, which are starred. So this must have been the Elim, because Tel Aviv is up there. So they had to go from here, and remember, this is a place about the size of not this, because it's just Gaza, so this is blown up a little bit. Okay, I thought this was like an entire map of Israel, like right around here for a sec. I now see the border of Gaza. Okay, so, but Tel Aviv is in the north of the country, so you're looking at like a state that's about the size of, New Jersey. So they had to go from here all the way up to here, and there were all these red places were where bad crap was happening, so they had to go kind of like right through it almost. Okay, it says, again, it was because of the local Israelis who've been helping the U.S. logisticians, I'm going to F up that word more times if they keep showing it in here, the U.S. helper people, logistics people, that's what we'll say, that they eventually got to Tel Aviv. The military intelligence source said they created a mini convoy and went through a running gun battle to get them to a safe place where they could then obtain transportation to Tel Aviv. It says, on the night of October 8th, the soldiers made their way to the military terminal at Ben Gurion International Airport in Tel Aviv for the exfiltration. It says the C-17 was on the ground for less than a half hour, all the sources said, just long enough to get fuel and get everybody accounted for and loaded up. All right, and so this is just, they must have done it on that date. This is where, so because there's those accounts on Twitter that like keep track of like where certain aircraft are and stuff, so just look at that. I don't really know what all that means, but okay. It says rockets started landing at the airport shortly after they were wheels up. It said loud explosions could be heard across central Israel and the suburbs of Tel Aviv late Sunday, according to CNN teams on the ground. It says Hamas had claimed it is targeting the Ben Gurion International Airport, Israel's international hub, which is located just outside Tel Aviv. It says according to the military intelligence source, it's only through the determination and loyalty of the Israelis who are willing to quickly grab the Americans, secure them, and begin the process of spiriting them away to safety that the soldiers who'd been at Ze'elim weren't captured by Hamas and eventually safely arrived in Tel Aviv. That was a sharp contrast to the attitude of the National Command Authority, the source says. Says if the timing had gone, they would have been taken hostage, and you would have seen the propaganda videos of American troops being held, and, let's be honest, knowing how our White House team would respond. Yep, that is what I was thinking. It says for all the criticism of Israel's intelligence service in the wake of the October 7th attacks, it's clear that the United States was caught just as off guard, and that failure quite easily could have cost some or all of these soldiers their lives and dragged the United States into open combat. And, just like Benghazi, the bean counters in Washington were content to leave the Americans to their own devices and not provide an escape plan. Fortunately, this didn't happen in a hostile country, or the results would have been quite different. So that is the article. And did any of you know about this at all? Or like, I mean, even I'm not saying like when it was something that nobody knew about, but I mean like within the last week, like have you seen this reported anywhere? Besides like right-wing sites like Red State and Breitbart, I haven't seen it anywhere else. So does this piss you off hearing about this? Hearing about the fact that we almost had troops like a lot of troops taken hostage, and that the superiors were fighting on whether sending in a plane to go ahead and get them out of there. I mean, again, reading this article really pissed me off because of a lot of the things in here. But anyway, let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.